before finally slipping forward, extending his right leg, and crooking underneath the twisted knot in the middle fence. Standing upright, he could see now. Him and his companion both. The passion of the sun beginning to burn in the distance, turning light blue into purple, and then into orange and yellow, and soon it would be red. He'd have to hurry. Taking a few nimble steps, the companion following with him. The transition from dirt to concrete again, but not homeowners concrete to city concrete, coarse and rough, but different, sturdier, thicker, more like it was made from granite, not just made from any old rock. He got to the edge. There was water inside the canal, but not a lot. It had been relegated to the far side, not his side, luckily. A stream had formed. The small divots and grooves inside of the concrete had made a perfect formation, a Nile-like creation. And with it came creatures, small little tadpoles, tiny fish, beings that could be seen moving, trying to get to their next destination. Nothing of extreme interest yet, though he knew his companion might enjoy catching one or two. He didn't mind. Her tail wagged. She must have seen it too. He leaned down, kneeled over, leaned back, put a hand on the concrete slide, the slope down a V formation, leading ever so softly into the middle. At first he wasn't sure how deep the slope would be, but it came clear, very clear, as soon as he started to move down onto his butt, his gluteus supporting his weight, the sneakers on the slope keeping him from slipping too far too fast, and the cat already prancing sideways down to the bottom as if nothing had changed. He gained purchase fully and began taking awkward, horse-trotted, bow-legged steps to the bottom, and finally reached it. It was darker down there. You could barely even see the inching light moving across the sky. He knew that would change. And suddenly the smells became so clear. The smell of not the sea, but the smell of a river fighting against humanity for dominance and failing. Mossy, kelpy, and maybe just a little pinch of salt. He knew that there had been times when this area flooded, but it hadn't rained nearly enough for that. And, worst case scenario, he'd grab up Slippers in a scoop under his arm and haul her up one side. He knew it wouldn't be too much trouble. He was careful like that, but still curious. He approached the small stream. Pockets of water had escaped from the stream and created pools. Somehow dirt had gotten in here, into the V formation. It had created nooks and brooks for water to channel and passage through. He got onto his knees and looked closely. Ants, little bugs, insects, all busy, all full of life, all working towards a goal. They each did something, had a purpose. They followed a command. They followed nature. And nature, though failing now, was fighting. The riptide of water for these small creatures was just an attempt at blossoming life, a small one. Insignificant to most, but it fascinated the boy. His face was alight with curiosity, sparkling almost as much as the sunrise. Slippers slipped over. She was lithe, accurate, and quick. Had a paw over the stream, gently putting her face close for a second and looking for something. The boy knew what. He knew she was trying to find a stray fish floating downstream. There's no way they could be bigger than her paw. But a snack was all right with him. He had never been very far down the canal, but he wanted to know what was down there. He knew he wouldn't find any buried treasure or any interesting science, but he knew he could be wrong. And it's not impossible that someone dropped a gold watch or a lighter, some heirloom somewhere. He could be a minor hero for finding it. The idea of being famous as a treasure hunter, him and his cat, it appealed to him. He thought maybe he'd see a proud sparkle in his parents' eyes, a look of awe from his brother, and a look of jealousy from his sister. He wanted that. He wanted veneration and acknowledgement, and all of it came to be from the tiny beings floating, one of them floating a little too close to the surface, quicker than possibly a lightning strike to the boy. Slippers bobbed her head down, and when it came back up, her mouth was open and filled with a tiny, ever so startled fish. Like a noodle, she slurped it up and gulped. In partial disgust and also in partial impress, he smiled. He felt a little bad for it, honestly, but he smiled. He knew maybe this might disrupt the ecosystem, but it was worth it if it kept his companion around. Small price to pay. And as he began walking the very small decline, the canal began to unfold side to side. Visible streaks of white and gray, being transcended only by the stream that seemed to flow ever downwards through the aqueduct that it had made for itself. The patter of the cat behind him slowed down, and he turned around to see she had caught up to him only to rub herself against his leg and knee. He knew what that exact expression of affection meant, and so he got down onto one knee and put his hands next to his hips. In a flash of motion, Slippers leaped through the air onto the small of his back, bouncing up before finally landing both paws adorably onto his shoulders. Cats can't make expressions of pleasure or happiness, not like we can understand. But if we could, if there was a way, this would be one. And as her face rested, her chin on his collarbone facing forward, he reached and held on to the bottoms of her hind legs. She was fat, honestly. She was a fat cat. No way around that one. The grunt that came from him was from her weight. As much as he felt ashamed, he stood up and began slowly carrying her downstream, downriver. Her tiny little heart beating on his back, his tiny little heart beating ever so faster at the weight. But the warmth, the calm, and the love of a caring for a being so much smaller than you, and the gentle breathing on his ear and neck, the rub of her cheek on his. Knowing she was turning her head and looking, he would comment on an object here and there, a tin can, a patch of grass, a piece of washed up seaweed. Their journey was just beginning, and already he couldn't help but think there was no place better on earth, No place better anywhere than being in the canal with his best friend.